And a good Wednesday morning, Quad Cities. I'm meteorologist Andrew Stutzke. The time right now is 9 o'clock on this very chilly Wednesday morning. We're welcoming you aboard here to Ask Andrew Live. This is episode 3, and this is something new to us here at WQAD. It is something we're going to do every single Wednesday, same time, same place here at 9 o'clock on our WQAD 8+ channel and app. And you can find that if you have a smart television, whether it's a Roku, whether it's an Amazon Fire Stick or an Apple TV. All three of those streaming devices will have the capability to pull in our live feed here through our WQAD 8+ app. So I want to welcome viewers that are watching on that platform. We're also likely pulling in viewers from social media as well. Here's how this will work. We're going to devote an entire half hour here on the WQAD 8+ app to answering your questions. We're also going to dive a little bit more in depth to what's going on in terms of weather, what the big weather story is and what the big weather story will be in the days ahead. Also coming up in just a few moments, our weekend weather anchor, Peter Warner, will be joining me to go over some other little weather tidbits. And typically Morgan would join us as well. So he's enjoying some well-deserved time off this week. So it's just the boys club with us this morning. We want to thank you again for watching. We're going to put up the number that you can text in just a moment to show you where you can send those questions. And in just a few moments, we're going to start answering those. But there it is. It's 309-304-0888. So if you're not watching from our social media, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, and you want to send in your question, simply text it to that number there, 309-304-0888. There may be a message data rate that applies. You see the fine tuning or the fine print there at the bottom of your screen. So keep that in mind. But we're going to get those questions answered here coming up in just a little bit. But I want to talk about the big weather story that we're going to be seeing here as we go throughout the next couple of days. And that is going to be these up and down temperatures. And we're going to get to that coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to check in and see what's going to happen today in terms of what we're doing with these temperatures, because we've been all over the place. We've been warm, we've been cool, especially this morning. Oh my goodness, Peter, we woke up to temperatures in the 30s. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on here.
Yeah, it's kind of like a swing I've noticed these last few days. It'll go up and we'll get some warm temperatures and then it's going to go right back down. And it's kind of variable from what we typically see here. I mean, we typically see a 72. That's our average high. What'd you have today, Andrew?
74.
Andrew had a 74 today, so we're just 2 degrees above average. The hottest we've ever seen it was in 1953, the coldest 1998. So, you know, it can vary a lot here in October. And you know what? That's what we've been seeing for most of our weather this month. These graphics are beautiful. Look at that. That's what we see in our average comparison. So typically, this is what we're seeing. Low 70s, high 60s. That's our typical temperatures this time of year. But look at this swing. You're going to see up and down with our temperatures here. So it's an 84 on Thursday, but then we're dropping back down to a 78. Saturday, we're climbing 16 degrees above normal. And then we're going to come back down to just 7, then 4, and then 5. But then we're going to climb right back up to 10 degrees above normal. It's these temperature swings that we're seeing with our 8-day forecast here. But it is good for harvest conditions. Andrew's going to tell you a little bit more about it shortly, but we're going to have lots of dry air and lots of sunshine in the forecast. And it is October, so it's harvest season. Tomorrow it's going to be excellent. The next 5 days, well, it's just going to be excellent as well. And next weekend, it's looking, again, excellent. We have just some beautiful conditions outside for harvest season, which is good. Even though we have these temperature swings, it's still going to be sunny. And it's still going to be beautiful outside. The most rain we've ever seen in weather history here in the Quad Cities on this day, 1.151 inches in October of 1927, almost a 100-year-old record coming up here in just a few years. And nationally, what was the big weather story this day in history? It was Hurricane Flora. It sat off the coast of Cuba for 5 days. This just saw continual rainfall and winds and storm damage. Winds up to 100 miles per hour. Look at that rainfall. More than 90 total inches of rainfall over 5 days. It just plopped down on top of Cuba and sat there. And the casualties estimated to around 7,000 people from this storm, Andrew. So it's a pretty big story today in weather history.
Yeah, what an incredible storm that was. My goodness. And it almost reminds you of what happened in the Carolinas, though that storm didn't sit there for that many days, but still I'm sure the amount of flooding and things was just absolutely devastating.
Yes, it was.
Oh, goodness. Let's hope that doesn't happen again anytime soon.
Yes, sir.
Well, I want to thank you for putting that together. In fact, Peter put some more things together that I'm going to go through here, and I'll show you that as we talk about kind of the longer range. I know a lot of you are starting to think a little bit about winter. Peter, you're probably getting excited about winter because this is going to be your first Midwest winter, right?
It's going to be my first Midwest winter, and part of me is so excited for ice fishing or going to play hockey at the pond, but not so much for those icy roads. That's going to be a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, driving in
ice takes some time. I'm a little bit worried about that.
Oh, it is not fun whatsoever. So let's hope we hold back on the ice for now. But I do want to show you what's going to happen here in the next couple of days, and we'll use our big board behind me, and I'll show you that. Plus, I want to give you a little bit of a more deeper dive in what we talked about this morning for the Ask Andrew question, and then we're going to head right back over to the Weather Center where you can rejoin Peter and myself, and we'll start taking your questions. But first, what about the big weather story? What is that going to be today going into the next couple of days? That's going to be these continued big swings in temperature. What's happening is we have all these cold fronts coming down from the north, but these fronts don't have any moisture to work with. So all they do is change our temperature pattern about every other day. The next front is due to arrive in here late Thursday. You're seeing the timing here on the screen above me. Late Thursday into Friday morning. Now, Future Track is kind of doing some wishful thinking here. It's trying to bring in some scattered showers and thunderstorms early Friday morning. I would not bank on that occurring just yet. We're going to give this a few more runs and see if that's still in there tomorrow morning. If it is, then we may need to add a slight shower chance to the Friday morning commute, but right now I'm going to keep it dry. The one thing that's for sure is we get another little blast of some cooler air Friday before some warmer air will start to arrive as we head back into the weekend. And of course, we've been so dry, we're talking about the expanding pre-drought and drought conditions. Notice it has filled the entire Quad Cities region back again. Yellow means dry conditions, so not drought, but just dry. The next level up is moderate. That's where we're starting to see it occur along Highway 20, especially east of Interstate 39 near Chicagoland. And also look at south of Galesburg there. We also have some moderate drought conditions starting to come back into play. I still don't think this is going to impact fall color. We are pretty much into the season now where it's not going to have a significant quality impact. So you are noticing some colors starting to emerge just to the north of us. This is the forecast through October 9th. Still right on track, I think, to see our fall colors here peak around the 25th of October. That is just 23 days away. Let's switch gears, and a reminder before we head back over to the Weather Center in just a few minutes, if you have a question you'd like me to answer live on the air, weather related only, of course, hit up that number at the bottom of your screen, 309-304-0888. Now that I got your attention, how about we talk a little winter forecast, what we're expecting for this. This was the Ask Andrew question that I answered this morning. One of the many things we look at is what kind of sea surface temperatures are we seeing in the East Pacific Ocean. That is where we have things like La Nina, El Nino form. Well, we obviously had an El Nino last year and also into early this year. Here's where things stand right now. We're at about what I would call neutral. There's neither an El Nino or a La Nina going on. But look at the forecast here. As we head through the rest of fall, get into the winter, we are forecasting a La Nina. In fact, more specifically, we're forecasting a weak La Nina. And here's what that means. And kudos to Peter for putting these graphics together for me. We dug into the data. This is what we found. There have been 12 weak La Nina winters in the Quad Cities. So let's start with the temperature. What are we likely to see? Well, we found that 9 out of those 12 weak La Nina winters were colder than normal here in the Quad Cities, by about 2 degrees or so colder than normal. So we do figure this is probably going to be a colder than normal winter. What about snow? The last 7 out of 12, or more than half of them, had more snowfall. How much more snowfall than normal? Almost 6 inches more snowfall than we typically see in an average winter. And also, more than half of them, 7 out of 12, had more rainfall than we typically see in an average winter. So when you put all that together, this is what it looks like on the map. You're definitely going to see cooler than normal temperatures or colder than normal temperatures invading from the northwest. Yes, some of this will extend into the Quad Cities at times this winter, and then you're going to see much warmer than normal temperatures as you get down here into the southwest, south central, and southeast. Even heading into the northeast, they're expecting warmer than normal temperatures this winter. This will be the overall track of the jet stream. That is important because this is where storm systems travel. And notice how close that jet stream is to us here in the Quad Cities. That's why we're also likely going to see an above average chance of seeing more snowfall and, yes, more rainfall. So we're going to put an article, all of this together. We'll put all of our heads together and put this out later this afternoon. It should be live on WQAD.com, and you can read that and all of our thoughts. NOAA will be releasing their official winter outlook in the next couple of weeks. I'm just giving you an early heads up as to what they're likely going to be talking about in that outlook once it officially is released. So snow lovers, you just might get your wish this year. We'll see how that works out. But I'm going to send it back to Peter really quickly. I'm going to come rejoin him. Again, normally we'd have Morgan here with us, but she's taking some well-deserved time off. So we're going to get right to answering some of your questions. We filled a good 10 minutes, and I have a feeling we have a couple piled up. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on those in just a second.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so we have this jet stream that we typically see that when we focus on weak La Niñas. And let's see, the last couple years, we've actually seen an increase in severity when it comes to weaker La Niñas. In 2016 and 17, we saw the first February tornadoes here in the Quad Cities. And at 2017-18, we saw December tornadoes from near Keokuk, and we also saw storm damage here in the Quad Cities during a weak La Niña. And lastly, we actually had two severe weather activities in 2022-2023 when we had some weak La Niña events as well. We had not only January tornadoes, but a February ice storm as well, Andrew. So we're noticing it's at least a trend maybe to keep an eye on as an increased severity with these weak La Niñas.
Yeah, that was interesting. That we had the first ever February tornadoes during that weak La Niña winter. We're no stranger to February tornadoes. I mean, we've had those even as early as a year or two ago. But still, the fact that it happened during a weak La Niña event, it kind of makes you wonder, are we going to see that repeat itself?
We can't exactly forecast that yet, but it's just a trend to keep an eye on and maybe to be ready for.
Exactly.
The data shows that increase.
And it's a good idea, a good reminder, too, that severe weather has no season.
No.
It's every month of the year practically in the Quad Cities now.
We can have severe seasons, but that doesn't mean it's not possible any other times.
Yep.
It just is more frequent.
And I have a feeling you're going to experience that this year.
Oh, yes.
You're probably going to be doing severe weather coverage in December, maybe January, February. So we'll see how things go. We'll see what happens.
Keep an eye on it.
We're going to check and see if we have some questions that we can answer for you here. I'm going to go up and pull up the live stream again.
Facebook.
Welcome, everyone, whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on the WQAD Plus 8, or 8 Plus app, I should say. We're happy to have you along. And again, we do this every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Little weather chat, little back and forth, and then we get right into your questions. You beat me to it. You're so quick at this.
Well, I was already sharing it on my own Facebook, so I was just getting it ready. I wasn't that quick. Stephen asked, and we kind of just talked about this a little bit, are we going to get a little of snow this year or maybe a lot of snow this year?
Yeah, the trend right now is to get more snow this year. If we follow what happened with those weaker La Niñas, the last 12 of them that have moved through, as you see there, more than half of them had more snowfall. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't get one, this winter where we don't get, above average snowfall. There's a few of those where we've had lackluster snowfall with it being a weak La Niña. But if you follow the trend and statistics, it looks like it's going to be a fairly decent year for snow.
You could say greater probability. Because it's only 7 out of 12 that I've seen, that larger increase. While it is more, it's not significantly more, but it's just something typically we would expect more.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean it's guaranteed.
And those winters, by the way, I'm pulling up my Excel spreadsheet because that's what I do. I put all this in Excel, and then you can kind of break it down like what we did in the graphic. Yes. If you're curious, the winters that had lackluster snow, there was one that was 2 inches short, and then there were two that were almost a foot short on snow. So the thing with La Niña is there's usually kind of no middle road. It's usually you're really lacking snow, or you're really having a good surplus of snow. It was hard for me to find a winter where it wasn't right down the middle. Most of the time it was either we were really missing the snow or we were not missing the snow.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Kind of goes up and down. That's just weather.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happens. The other piece of this card too, and I see you were searching for that.
Trying to figure that out.
The polar vortex, we've kind of talked about this a little bit too in the last couple of weeks. There it is. Yes. We talked about this, in fact, last time on Ask Andrew Live about how the polar vortex was weak. And, weak sounds like a good thing.
It sounds like a good thing.
Right.
But it's never a good thing.
No. It's one of those things you can't assume. Sounds good.
No. I know, right? Just like a lot of things in life.
I know, right? You know what they say about assuming? Yes, and we won't say it here.
No.
But there's an example of what I mean. So a strong polar vortex is very circular.
Yes.
It's very tight. We're not seeing that here.
No, and that's allowing those areas of pressure from that north tropical polar zone, not tropical, but polar zone, to break down into the Canadians. And it's kind of part of the Ferrel cells and the Hadley cells that we see rotating down. And those bring in those winds with that colder air. And when it's weaker, that allows those pressure systems to move further down here to the United States typically, right?
That's right. And it matches up perfectly with what we would see typically in a weak La Nina, in that we're talking about a colder than normal winter. Like Peter just said, these colder air masses, when you've got a weaker polar vortex, can move about more freely, including coming down here into the United States. So that is another piece of the winter forecast puzzle that we're watching very carefully. Actually, I should say tracking.
We are kind of tracking.
We are tracking. We track a lot, yeah.
We track storms here at WQ8E.
And polar vortexes.
And polar vortexes. Raym asks, is Hurricane Ron stronger than Hurricane Nina?
Let's see, is Hurricane Ron stronger than Hurricane Nina? That's a good question. We're going to have to look this up. That's why we have the power. We have the tools to look this up. We do. So give me a second and go ahead and go to the next one.
Yes. Kelly from Rock Falls. I want to know about wildlife habitats in the wake of hurricanes. Are alligators and snake populations impacted by floodwaters and high winds?
From what we've seen, absolutely. It impacts every living ecosystem.
Every living ecosystem.
It really impacts their habitat. When you think about the water getting as high as it does, and look at what happened in North Carolina, where the water and the mudslides came down so fast, just
so quick,
wiping out everything in its path, including, human homes. It absolutely has an impact on all of the above. It doesn't matter if it's something that's already living in the water or something that's a hybrid on land water. Yes, hurricanes have significant impacts on every living thing you could think of. Even the wind, yes.
Oh, yes, it makes a major impact, especially with fish populations, because when these water levels rise and it gets into areas that water typically doesn't go, fish will follow there. And then once the water slowly starts to dry out, you also see fish get trapped in these smaller puddles or smaller sections. At least that's, from a fisherman, that's my big go-to, is when you worry about the fish populations with that as well.
Yeah, and I was just trying to think of the other thing too that I was noticing with Helene as it was moving in. We could actually see on Doppler radar large populations of birds that got sucked into the eye of that storm. And with the winds being so strong, they couldn't really get out of the center of the storm. They were just kind of circling and circling and circling. So even the ones way up in the air get impacted.
Yes. It impacts everything.
Yeah, it does. Nothing gets untouched.
Nothing gets untouched. Next question, Raheem asking, I want to know if we should worry about the Imhoff flow affecting the jet stream.
What have we got? What to know? Should worry about the Imhoff flow. There's some really good questions coming in here.
That is some really good question.
I could not find a Hurricane Ron, by the way, so I'm not sure where that is coming from. Let's go to one more.
Okay.
While I research that.
What is going on with the spring blossoming plants? They've lost their leaves, but lilacs and trees have flowers popping up. I've never seen them do that before.
I don't think that's a real question, by the way. Anyway, I'm sorry. What was the other one? With the leaves?
Yes, the leaves. What is going?
Oh, this one here.
Yes.
What is going on with the leaves, but lilacs and trees have flowers popping up? Oh, probably because of the warmth that we've had lately.
Yes.
I have noticed, I have these, I don't know if you call them daisies. It's some kind of cone flower.
Okay.
But they typically come up in the summer. Well, I thought they were done. They started drying out, and it looked like they were dying off for the season, but now they're coming back again. And I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that, we had a little bit of a cool down. It was a few days, but then we warmed right back up to near 80 degrees, and we've done that for the last several days here. So I think they're getting a second round, if you will. I wish I could say that we're going to ask Craig Hignite at 11. Unfortunately, Craig Hignite is out sick today, so we're not going to be able to ask him that question coming up on GMQC at 11. But we will try to get that in maybe next week. I think that's a great question. I'm certainly no plant expert, but I think that's a great question for Craig, and we'll see if we can get that in next week.
Perfect Craig question.
But I'm assuming it has to do with the fact that we've warmed up again significantly.
Yes.
Because I've noticed that with some of my flowers.
Same thing happened with my potted plants on my patio.
Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot. So let's get
Weather does funky things to plants.
It does.
Plants get confused.
It's confusing.
It's life, though.
It even confuses us sometimes.
It does, yes.
Right?
And that's okay. That's what makes this job so fun. It's challenging. There's something different every day, all of that good stuff. But yeah, with this up and down temperature pattern, I'm not surprised we're seeing stuff like that.
Yes.
Not surprised at all.
Next question is, why is it so dry and why hasn't it stormed really well?
So the reason it's so quiet and it's so dry around here is, guess where all your energy's tied up at?
It's in the tropics.
It's in the tropics. We've been talking about this active tropical setup for the last several weeks here, where we still have some tropical energy in the Gulf of Mexico. As of last check this morning, I haven't updated this graphic yet, but that 40% is still accurate. The 10% has gone to zero for the short term, but you're going to see those numbers pop up on the side of your screen. So the 10%'s gone at the top in terms of this wave of energy entering the Gulf of Mexico, but it still has a 40% probability of developing into something further in the coming days. But yeah, there's been this front that's just been hanging out around Florida, south of Louisiana, south of Texas, and that front has tied up all the moisture.
It is.
So we have these fronts that are moving through. There's some energy with them, but there's no moisture.
There's no moisture with it.
Then these fronts can't do anything.
And also primarily here, when we do get those fronts, if there is any moisture, they've been steering mainly north here of the Quad Cities. You can see with this graphic here that you can see some rainfall to the north, but it's never up near, South Dakota.
Right.
But it's never going to get down here to the Quad Cities. We're not seeing a lot of moisture. Again, there's that slight chance we're going to be keeping an eye on Friday morning. But beyond that, all that moisture is staying up north into northern Wisconsin and into Canada. We aren't seeing a lot of that moisture here, and just a lot of dry air, either cold or warm.
And we're getting a lot of feedback, too, from the dry ground. Believe it or not, dry ground has a huge impact on the amount of moisture you can get in the air.
Yes.
If we had plentiful rainfall, or if we had more rainfall and the ground was really wet, that front that would come in to late tomorrow night into Friday morning would have a much, much better chance of producing showers and storms. But we've got dry ground, that equals dry air, and that means, we're just not going to see anything at least too heavy in the near term here.
That's true.
It's going to be quiet.
All quiet. Even on the 14-day, we're looking pretty quiet.
Oh my gosh, the 14 days, a snooze fest. It's just a little up and down, but no rain.
Normally, we typically see some sort of trend potential for rain, but nothing.
Nothing.
Let's bring it to our next question. Marcus asks, what factors are responsible for different kinds of snow we see throughout the cold season? For example, large snowflakes, wet, heavier snow.
So the type of snowflake depends on a couple of different things. And I may have something in there, too, that you might be able to pull up. But we know when it comes to snowflakes and the type of snow, it all depends on the temperature. That's the number one thing that we look at, well, other than the amount of available moisture. So let me give you an example. When we have snow coming in and it is significantly below freezing, I'm talking like, 18 degrees, 20 degrees, even 25 degrees. They're much lighter, they're much fluffier because colder air cannot hold as much moisture as what warmer air can. You remember we get those wet, heavy snows? They're like slush. Yes. You pick it up and it's like a slushie from across the street at 7-Eleven. It's just wet. Yes. That's when the snow falls at temperatures that are closer to freezing. That's when you get those huge snowflakes that are just loaded with water. And this is an excellent graphic actually to bring up in regards to that, because not only does temperature impact the size and the density of the flake, but the rate at which it falls is impacted by temperature too. I love this.
Oh yes, because it's kind of physics. Those colder, it can be lighter. It's a little bit more fluffier when you have those faster ones because it's thicker and you have that water in there. Its drop rate and the velocity it falls with is much faster.
You got it. Yeah, a lot of physics being involved in here. But the bottom line is your temperature plays a big factor on what type of snow you're going to get. And if we're forecasting or outlooking, if you will, a colder than normal winter, that means most of your snows are probably going to be the fluffier kind that blow around a little bit easier.
Just a little bit more fun.
Yeah. I think not only is it more fun, but I think it's easier to clean up after.
Oh, yes.
So you go out there with the leaf blower and done. Oh, yeah. I love a leaf blower snow.
A leaf blower.
It's worth it, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Quick work. More every day here.
Yeah.
Mr. Andrew.
Well, now I know what to get you for Christmas. Okay. So you may not own, a home yet, but a leaf blower will do you good.
Oh goodness.
Got a few more questions.
Got
about 5 minutes. And again, if we don't get to one of your questions, don't worry. We're going to hang on to it to next week, and we'll get it answered too.
Pinkertons.
Oh, that's Linnell's cat.
Is that Linnell's cat?
I think that's her kitty. Yes.
Oh.
Good morning, Linnell. She's our good friend from up in Elizabeth.
Oh, she is.
Carroll County, yes. Way, way up north. One of these days we will get the beast up there.
We got to get the beast.
We'll get it up there.
And wants to know when he'll have to help keep Linnell warm.
Ooh, yeah. We talked about that colder air moving in this winter. Yep. I have a feeling you two are going to be doing a lot of cuddling this winter.
It's looking a little bit colder. I mean, we're starting to see those cooler temperatures here pretty shortly. Let me see if I can find that 14-day graphic and show them. We're dropping down, I think, in the 14 to the 60s coming up pretty soon.
Oh, yeah. We'll eventually get there. It's going to take some time, but we will eventually get there. It's just going to take a few more weeks yet, I think. We have one from Steve, it looks like.
Yes. What about spring and summer? Since we go into growing season on the farm drier than normal for this time of year, it has been making a good harvest so far.
So looking ahead to spring, and this is something to remember because it wasn't that long ago we came out of a triple dip La Nina. And that spring that we came out of a triple dip La Nina was last spring. And last spring was so active in terms of severe weather, and we had little to no drought. So we're likely going to see a repeat of that next spring. You're going to likely see more severe weather, above average rainfall. So that is something, I think, a trend that's worth watching, especially if we come out of a La Nina in the spring. That is a very big telltale sign that we could have a big time severe weather spring season next year around here. Great question.
Well, I think that's all we got question-wise so far.
Cool. We had some good questions
We had
today.
some great questions
There were a couple I weren't familiar with, so I don't know how legit those questions are, but I've never heard of that, whatever theory that was in the question earlier. Honestly, I've never heard of it, so I can't talk much about it. But that's all I got about that anyway.
We can always research.
We can always research and
see if we can touch back with you, touch base.
Yes, exactly.
Jared was wondering, is climate change affecting fall color changes? It seems trees are turning later than they did 20 years ago.
It is, yes. Fall and winter are two of the fastest warming seasons in the Quad Cities. So what we're noticing is that our fall season is starting later, and our fall season is getting longer.
Much longer.
And what's interesting is winter's caught in the middle, and winter's getting squeezed.
It's shortening.
It's shortening, yes. We're actually seeing spring kind of start a little bit earlier than we have in years past too. So if you're like me, I'm not a fan of winter. It's not bad news for me.
I don't mind.
But it is one of those things where it's like, well, we do need a winter. There are benefits to winter around here. So, we don't want winter to go away completely.
No. In the last couple of years, we've noticed that too, even with less rainfall, less snowfall we've seen over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I believe last year we had just that one big day, correct?
Yeah, last year was a cakewalk. We had all of our snow for the winter season in about 2 weeks.
2 days, right? Yeah. That's what Morgan told me.
It was so quick. I wouldn't mind another winter like that, honestly, where you get all the snow in just a small period of time, and then the rest of the winter's fine. But we had it easy. There were no complaints about last winter whatsoever. Not on my end.
No. We got another one. Kelly's wondering, are eddies created on the Mississippi due to the hurricane?
Eddies created on the Mississippi, on the river?
Yes.
I don't know for certain if you can get eddies on the Mississippi River from a hurricane. I know it is a fairly wide body of water, but there's no way that would reach all the way upstream here in the Quad Cities. No. That's a huge, huge distance. We have seen instances where the mouth of the Mississippi River in the Gulf of Mexico has actually reversed direction because of hurricanes that have that really strong onshore flow to the winds that come up from the south. That's been possible. That doesn't impact anything up here because we're talking about something that is happening over a short period of time.
Yes.
But nonetheless, if you're ever down there during a hurricane and you see the water of the Mississippi, the flow of it, reverse directions, that's kind of alarming. But nothing that would ever impact us this far north.
Yes.
Great question, though.
Great question.
Very good question. And with that, I think we're out of time.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah, the shepherd hook's coming in. So
Time to go.
they're like, we got to go. Yes, we have to get off to our morning editorial meeting.
The meeting,
Yes, we're going to
yes.
decide what the news we're going to cover for the day with all your fantastic story ideas and all those good things. Thank you again for joining us this morning. Peter, thank
great.
you for joining me too.
It's always fun.
I love this. Yeah. We'll get Morgan back here next week.
Yes.
She'll be back from vacation this upcoming weekend. So we're looking forward to that. I want to thank you for joining us. Again, don't forget to download our News 8 app, the Storm Track 8 app. And
Need 'em
also,
both.
if you have that smart TV like we do right here, make sure you have the WQ88 Plus app. Totally free. That's how you ask Andrew. Boy, there's a lot of asks in there. Ask
Always
Andrew live.
local, 24/7. I think
Yes,
that's their thing.
we're always there. You guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you coming up later on GMQC at 11.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 8 Plus app everywhere you stream.